Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business Spotlight, the podcast where we shine a light on the incredible entrepreneurs and business leaders in our community. I'm your host, Craig Whipperman with Music City Action Coach, and today we are excited to introduce you to someone who is blazing a trail in the field of executive leadership coaching and development right here in Nashville. Our guest today is Brian Lowenthal, owner of Mindset for Success. We'll dive into Brian's background, explore the challenges he's faced, and the successes he's celebrated. Whether you're a fellow entrepreneur, an aspiring business owner, or simply someone who loves to support local businesses, this conversation is sure to inspire and inform. So without further ado, let's welcome Brian to the podcast. How you doing today, Brian?
Hi, Craig. Thanks. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you.
Good. Well,
Appreciate it.
share with us how you maybe the highlights of your journey. How did you get into coaching here?
Well, interesting because as I look back to answer that question, I realized that from the time I was a teenager, I've kind of been teaching and coaching. I did some swimming teaching as a high schooler, and also my senior year in high school, a couple of friends and I took on the coaching of a little league baseball team in the town I grew up in. And that led me to believe that I should become a secondary education teacher, high school teacher, and basketball coach, and which I did not do, but I did go on in my corporate life to become a CHRO and a vice president of organization and leadership development. So my adult career has been somehow focused on achieving my purpose in life, which is to enable people to be successful at whatever they want to be successful at and to have fun doing it. So the fun part is people know me well, know that I wear a Mickey Mouse watch. And I've been wearing this watch for almost 30 years, not the same one, but a version of it. And so it's always there to remind me that whatever time it is, it's time to have fun. And like I said, one of the things I love doing is helping people be successful. And to do that, you have to really be a great coach. So that's really what's kind of directed my North Star for the last 45 years. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, and that's part of our philosophy too, is that you must have fun, and business owners, we coach primarily business owners, and there's
yeah,
a leadership piece to that. But if you're not having fun, then you know what? We got some work to do because
exactly
it
right.
should be fun,
That's
Life
it.
should be rewarding and fun. And I love the way that your simple way of reminding yourself to have fun because that's what can happen sometimes. You get tunnel vision into what you're doing, and you got to have somebody tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, let's not stress out too much about this. Let's
Yeah,
let's see if we can just enjoy the ride."
exactly right. Yeah, I've become over the years a bit of a disciple of the great UCLA basketball coach John Wooden. And as you may know, and listeners may know, John Wooden created what he called the pyramid of success, and it was a framework that Coach Wooden used to help his players primarily develop the character and life skills they were going to need after basketball. And it just so happened he, as a teacher and coach, used the game of basketball as his classroom. And so he would tell you, I don't really teach basketball, I teach life. And I say this because one of the cornerstones of this pyramid is a building block named enthusiasm.
Mhm.
And he always talked about, just as you just did, the fact is if you don't show passion and enthusiasm for what you're doing, the likelihood of doing it really well is probably pretty low.
Mhm.
So that fun part really does fit into the idea of having enthusiasm for whatever it is you do.
Yeah, no question about it. Um, and enjoying the ride and remembering that life has ups and downs and we're just here to experience them
It
and
is
harness the energy
That's right.
And I think a lot of folks forget to enjoy the ride. You know, it reminds me, and I shared this the other day with someone I was speaking to. Do you remember the movie Parenthood?
Hmm.
You remember the scene there near the end? I think it's Steve Martin's. I don't know if it's his mother or his grandmother. She talks about, I think they're, as a matter of fact, I went back and rewatched it, and Steve and his wife, I think is Mary Starnberger. I don't know. Do you know that actor's name?
I'm I'm not sure who she
She's
was,
married
but
to uh, Ted Danson, Ted Danson's wife. I know
oh
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So those two were the parents, uh, and of course it's a great movie. But I think it's Steve's grandmother just kind of shows up in the scene in the middle of a conversation that Steve and his wife are having about the possibility of having another kid. She really wants to have another kid. It would have
Hmm.
been number four for
Yeah.
them. And Steve didn't want it. It's like, it's just too messy. Why do we want another kid? And then out of the blue, his grandmother, I think, just kind of shows up and starts saying, when I was, 12 years old, my uncle such and such took me to the fair, and we went on the roller coaster and we went up and down and all around. And she said, I got off. I'm telling you, I can't remember when I was so excited, exhilarated, scared to death, and having fun all at the same
Well,
time,
at the same
you
time.
know?
Yeah.
And she said, and there was others who wanted to go on the merry-go-round. I didn't want to go on the merry-go-round. It's too boring.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
what makes it funny is the interaction between husband and wife afterwards. I'll let
Right.
you go look it up. But I've always taken away from that scene that life is a roller coaster.
It
You know,
is.
you've got to enjoy the ride. And
It is. And you can hold different emotions, sometimes what appears to be opposing emotions at the same time.
yeah, right.
So, in business, in running an organization, running a company, there's the combination of anxiety and thrill
Right.
at the same time. And it really is the up and down, and there's so much of how you deal with it, how you
Hmm.
confront it, and how you respond to it, as opposed to letting it take over you.
Hmm.
The more you can control it and understand what's in your control, typically the more effective you'll be at managing that roller coaster.
So let
So,
me share something with you along those lines because I was reading a book not too long ago about actually harnessing that
mm,
energy, and using it to in a positive sense. Have you ever heard of that kind of spin on
I
it?
I don't know the book that you're
Uh,
speaking of, but I do know the concept, which is again, it's actually something that one of the things that Coach Wooden talked about in his pyramid of success. He had a block that he called self-control.
hmm,
And in the definition of that is really to be in control of your emotions.
mm-hmm,
That you don't want to let your emotions take you too far afield, either way, up or down.
mm-hmm,
And one of the things that I like to coach executives on is to understand the emotion, be aware of where that emotion is coming from. And if you can understand where it's coming from and why you're having it, you've harnessed it. You can then use it as a way to help you propel yourself to greatness, or to stop a slide and to bring you back to an even point, a point of curiosity where you can start to move forward.
yeah.
So,
You know what? I found that to be great advice. Be curious.
yeah.
Just be curious about everything. And
Well,
and the first step to that is having a self about
yeah,
yourself, about the way you're feeling, about the way you're acting. About your behavior. But the first step in all of that is to have the awareness that you need to be curious.
that's it.
To
That's it.
take
Well,
that step.
our newest leadership guru is a guy by the name of Ted Lasso. Have you seen, have you seen
Uh,
that?
you know what? That's on Apple TV, right?
Apple TV, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard so many people talk about that show, and I haven't watched it. I haven't seen
Well,
it at
the
all.
what's kind of interesting, it's both a funny, entertaining, and yet very serious and sobering
Hmm.
show. Jason Sudeikis is the individual who plays the role of Ted Lasso. Ted is a American football coach who's hired by the owner of a premier soccer league team, a woman who just got that team in a divorce from her husband. She wants nothing more than to decimate the team because it's her husband's baby, and she wants to get back at him for what he did to her. So she
Hmm.
hires this guy, Ted Lasso, this coach, who she believes, since he doesn't know anything about soccer, doesn't know anything about living in the UK, is perceived to be a kind of a hayseed from Kansas, this good old boy, that she's going to manipulate him to help him decimate the team. And yet, what happens? Ted inherits a team, a dysfunctional team. The players are fighting in the locker room with one another. They don't like each other. The community doesn't like the fact that he's now the coach. Other coaches don't like the fact that she's brought him in. And what he does is demonstrates that through his ability to be curious and not judgmental about things, he's able to enable all to embrace him and what he does. Now, the other thing that's so interesting about this is Jason Sudeikis is actually a student of John Wooden. Here I go
I'll
back
be
again
darned.
to John Wooden. He learned about the John Wooden pyramid of success when he was a college basketball player, and he often said, if I ever have a chance to play a coach in whatever venue it might be, I'm going to fashion that character after John Wooden.
Oh,
And
wow.
and in fact, there's many places in the series where they actually show the pyramid of success up on the wall in Ted Lasso's office. And as you begin to study the pyramid and know about it, and you know about John Wooden's values, it comes through just as evident as it could, that here's this Ted Lasso acting like and behaving like what we would expect a modern day John Wooden to
Awesome.
act like. So,
That's awesome. Yeah. So, interesting. We have a 12-week leadership course that we're putting on.
mhm.
It's a great course. Has 12, long and short of it, there's 12 weeks. There's 12 individual 30-minute videos, but we complement the videos with texts, with
Oh,
books. John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. The book by Jocko Willink, I think, the Navy SEAL,
yep,
Extreme Ownership.
right.
And then the third one, John Wooden on leadership. And I was familiar with the first two books, and believe it or not, had not read John Wooden's book. So I'm digging into that.
So it's interesting you talk. John Maxwell actually consulted Coach Wooden
Oh,
early
wow.
in Maxwell's career, as he was in the process of developing his own 21 traits of top leaders. He consulted with Coach Wooden on what Coach Wooden's view of that was. And
Hmm.
so you see a little bit of Coach Wooden in the work that John Maxwell does.
Wow,
So,
that's fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so 50 years ago, the John Wooden had the streak going, I guess, right?
Well,
The national championship streak, I guess.
he won 10 championships in 12 years
Okay.
as a college coach at UCLA. And this year is actually the 50th anniversary of that 10th NCAA championship. As would have it, coach decided after the game, on his way from the court to the locker room, to retire from college basketball. He hadn't told anybody, hadn't talked to his wife about it, who is very devoted to his wife Nell. Hadn't talked to any of his assistant coaches. Hadn't talked to anyone. But in that moment, that victorious moment, he going to congratulate his team on the achievement of the national championship, made the decision in his mind that he was going to retire from college basketball.
Wow.
And so this year is the 50th year of that national championship.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. And
phenomenal.
yeah, so the other great coach that comes to mind, of course, in my mind is Nick Saban.
Yep.
He just recently retired, and I don't know if it was such a snap decision for him. I think he had given it some time, but his passion in life, I think,
Yeah.
was to
I
bring.
I I heard he wanted to do TV commercials. That's why he retired.
Maybe so. Well, he's pretty good at those, you know.
That's right.
But his. I remember reading about early in his tenure there at Alabama. I think an article about the fact that he's had so many people come up to him, uh, saying, thinking back to the Bear Bryant days,
Yep.
and him interacting with some of the older players who had been around at that time, and the impact that Bryant had on them throughout life.
Yep.
And I think, if you hear Saban talk, he hasn't always been, as invested in his players' wellness or well-being. He figured out in order for him to be successful, he had to make each one of his players allow them to create value for themselves. And
Right.
I don't know. It's being an Alabama fan and watching him being interviewed and listening into his show and just all the gold nuggets he drops. It's pretty fascinating. His I don't know, his ability to lead and coach and teach. And you know what? He would teach the audience. He
Yeah.
would teach people who would listen. And I don't know if he did that intentionally or not, but it was just who he was. But so anyway,
Right.
there's great leaders in coaching. There's no question about it. Tell me
Well,
about yourself. You kind of you skimmed over there. You originally wanted to be a teacher and a basketball coach,
right.
and then that didn't happen. Uh, what? How did that not happen?
No. Well, I um I worked my way through college in retail, working in menswear to pay for my off-campus lifestyle. And so I had a full-time job as a manager for a menswear store in Bloomington, Illinois, at the Illinois State University.
Mhm.
And and while I was getting my degree in education, and part of all I think education degrees is the student teaching. And I was assigned to do a student teaching gig in a small rural high school in Illinois.
Mhm.
And my teaching degree was going to be in business education, distributive education. And unfortunately for me, the school being in rural Illinois was not a school where the students necessarily saw business as their next step. The reason why is because many of the young men who went to school there, many of them would go to work at a Caterpillar factory, which was just not too far down the road. So they knew they'd be getting great jobs at Caterpillar. Great. The other young men were going to inherit their family farm. And so for them, they didn't feel that all these business courses and all that would necessarily have much value for them. And the young ladies who went to school there married those guys. So for them, the belief that I need to learn much about business really wasn't there. And as much as I attempted to show them that that mindset wasn't the correct one, I didn't get much response from them, didn't get much reaction from them. So when I was faced with the decision, do I want to go into teaching or did I want to continue in a career in retail? I took the retail career. And what was interesting though is that as I started that career, the owner of the company that I was working for knew that I had this degree in teaching, and he asked me to design training programs for all of the salespeople in the retail store. So I went from a business education degree thinking it was going to be used in high school when in fact it got used in the corporate world to start sales training and others. From there, I took a position with a global consulting firm in training and development. And from there, the coaching training uh, uh, process started for me. So even though I wasn't in high school, I was still teaching and training corporate leaders and executives on how to be successful.
Wow. And so how long have you been doing this then, coaching and leading
Uh,
executives?
40 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Uh, how have you seen over those 40 years, uh, what's changed in what you teach?
You know, it's interesting. The nothing, I think this is safe to say, nothing per se has changed. What has changed is what these principles, leadership principles, are now being applied to.
Hmm.
So it's the application of those principles that may have switched. So early in my career, we were focused on leadership in an environment of quality management. You remember in the 80s, beginning of the 80s, the United States was getting battered by the Japanese quality, and the
Yeah.
United States President Reagan established an award called the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award. And that award was designed to help American industry improve the quality of their products and services. So he established this award. So leadership at that time was about leading for quality management, leading to ensure a high quality product, leading to ensure great customer satisfaction and to be competitive against the Japanese. Now, fast forward a little bit, and we get into the 70s or the 80s and 90s, and our focus now we got the quality up. Now we've got to understand about customer satisfaction. So
Mhm.
it's not only the quality of our products and services, but we have to look at how do we satisfy our customers better than anybody else. So it was leadership around customer satisfaction, and what we found was the adage that customer satisfaction can never exceed employee satisfaction because it's the employees who create the customer engagement and the customer sat. So now leadership, those same leadership principles became directed towards employee engagement, empathy, compassion for employees, along with the need for clear goals, feedback, incentives, and inclusivity. So then now, fast forward to today, and and I don't know about you, but I can't pick up an article in any business magazine or in any newspaper that doesn't somehow have a dozen articles about artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
There's not one that I've seen, no blog, no anything that doesn't talk about AI and the use of technology and data analytics. So now, as leaders, our charge is to understand how we can lead either our organizations or our people in this new age of artificial intelligence. And what will that look like as this continues to progress? So it's not so much, Craig, that the leadership skills have changed. It's more about how we're applying, what kind of situations are we now applying those leadership skills to? And that's what has changed over those 40 years.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Yeah, I do remember the 80s and you remember TQM, Total Quality
TQM, yeah,
Management?
that's right.
That was the big
Deming,
boom.
Edward Deming was the
Yeah.
the father of quality management.
Yeah, that was the
Right.
big, I do remember that. And I remember where I was working and I remember how that was such the buzzword, you know? Um, and then of course, you kind of skipped through the Amazon piece. It seems like, customer service, yes. And customer, and I think Amazon kind of drove that, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, they
It's
did.
like and you know what? I think the consumer's mindset has gotten to where they expect it. They expect delivery almost immediately. They
That's
expect the
right.
quality. And if they don't like it, they return it with no problems, no
That's it.
issues.
Yeah.
So it's like, because I don't know if uh, you travel outside the country, there's not, I don't get the sense, at least I remember, that it's like that in other countries where there's such a demand for, service like that. But I don't know. It's definitely that case here.
Well, it's interesting. I just got back from an overseas trip, and one of the things I noticed, to your point though, was that Amazon is everywhere outside of the US as well. And that
Hmm.
we were talking to some people, and they said, "Well, gee, where do you get this?" And they looked at me like I'm a dummy. Amazon, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
where else would you get it? But Amazon, and we've got FedEx and
Yeah.
UPS and other means that the immediacy, gratification of making an online purchase, their businesses have exploded in terms of being able to deliver things overnight.
Right.
So
Right.
it's that whole gratification need by customers is fulfilled in many different ways than we ever would have seen before.
Right. Right.
So
Which, has given birth, that whole environment, given birth now to what called, you referred to, right? That the age of AI. And I guess, AI has been quietly in development for quite some time and
it's
just
been there.
recently made breakthroughs in the last, well, I think the big, once Chat GPT hit the mainstream there, what has that been, a couple of years ago now? That's
Yeah,
really when I started seeing it and hearing about it. But you're ma managing in this age where I don't know, man. What are you seeing? Are leaders, executives, did their workforce concerned about losing their jobs? I mean, anytime there's a technology
yeah.
evolution that happens, right? What nuances are you
Well,
seeing that?
your point there is right. Every time we start to see evolution in things, and we fear that the jobs will be lost, new jobs get created. So yeah, just the fact that we look at Amazon and say, "Holy cow, we don't go to stores anymore. What are we going to do if we can't go into a store to buy something?" Well, now we go online. But
Mhm.
to fulfill all of that, we've had to build these huge warehouses. We didn't have people working in warehouses to the extent we do now. Amazon is an employer of almost 1 million people, as
Wow,
is Walmart. The
wow.
Walmart stores now employ almost 1 million people. So who would have thought that a retail organization, a consumer products distribution organization, would employ that many people? But they do. Then you got the service delivery. UPS has grown, FedEx has grown. All of the ancillary services have grown up around it.
Hmm.
But we thought the internet and online purchase was going to kill everything. And yet here we are. I don't know. Personally, I don't know what AI is going to do. I don't have a crystal ball to be able to see what that's going to look like too much in the future. But you're right. It speeds up the ability to get information, the ability to analyze data in ways that we never could have before. It can just grind that stuff, because of the swiftness of the computer. What used to take 2 weeks or longer is now done in about 2 minutes. So what that's going to create or look like, I wish I had the silver ball and could stay out in front of it, but I don't. But it's a sure bet. It's going to create new jobs, new ways of doing work, new ways of living that we haven't conceived of yet.
Right,
So,
right. There's
and I
no,
think that's the concern that organizations have, companies have, that start to use AI, and the same concern that employees have is, what does this mean to me?
mhm.
And we haven't yet been able to identify what that is. So,
Yeah, right. Well, here we sit here in the heart of Music City, right? And it's fascinating to hear. Gosh, who was it who told me? Uh, like I think a Bob Dylan song that he released late in his career was reproduced with a voice that he had back in his 20s.
right.
It was some
That's
silly
right.
thing like that. But
Yeah. So
I mean,
the thing that's going to be interesting, I think, of concern is originality and authenticity. So the Bob Dylan song that was recreated using AI, you've seen great artwork that's been reproduced that people say they can't tell the difference between the original and the AI produced artwork. Music is the same way. I was somewhere a three-piece band was playing. It was two guitars and a drum. The drum was a square about the size of a stovetop. You know, the electric stovetop where it has different size circles for the different burners. That was the
Mhm.
drum that the guy was using, and it sounded exactly like a drum.
Hmm.
But yet the four circles on this little square pad, he's playing the drum.
Hmm.
So it's the concern, I think, is the originality of things, the authenticity of things, the ability to create new things is where AI changes the dynamic of how we'll live and
Yeah.
how we'll receive things.
Right.
But again, I wish I could project or or help think about what that's going to look like. I'd rival Elon Musk for his uh, wealth, I guess, if I could do that. But
Yeah.
good
Right. Of
luck.
course.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
Well, uh, it's when did The Matrix come out? Like 2001 or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
I mean, and that was like pretty foretelling, of what life could be. And here we are. I don't
Yeah.
know how close we are to that, but it's
That's
kind
right.
of, I
Yeah.
don't know, foretelling to go back and consider that movie. But so, we talk about authenticity and uh, you think about how blockchain's used
Well,
in the financial sector there as
there you
I
go.
don't know. It seems like there ought to be some way of authenticating in that form.
Yeah. And I just read an article where somebody scammed somebody else out of $1.6 billion worth of cryptocurrency.
Oh my goodness.
And they have no way to trace it.
Oh wow.
They can't trace it. So here you've got, again, an idea, a thought that was intended to be an improvement over, the 250, 300-year-old banking system that Alexander Hamilton designed, way back in 1700, which is still pretty good.
Hmm.
Works pretty well, but someone said, well, maybe let's find this other one, and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin came about, and yet somebody got scammed out of 1.6 billion with no way to figure out how to get it back or where it went.
Wow. Okay. So
So,
that's
yeah,
pretty that's kind of fascinating to think about.
exactly. So,
Um, Crazy. So tell me, Brian, what's your for you to stay current? You've got to be an avid reader, right?
yeah, somewhat.
Somewhat of an avid reader.
Yeah.
So you've kind of pointed out John Wooden's material as some of your favorite. Is there any other material that and John Maxwell's as well?
Maxwell. Yeah,
Yeah.
is
What
true.
other
Well,
material?
Malcolm Gladwell writes quite a bit.
Hmm.
Um, Daniel Pink has been an author over the years. Simon Sinek
Oh
is
yeah.
Simon Sinek doesn't write as much as he does video.
Hmm.
Well, someone who's a pretty prolific writer who I like to keep tabs on is Adam Grant. He's a professor at Wharton, and he's somebody that I believe has a really good pulse on our world today. And he's someone I follow quite a bit. Adam Grant
Adam
is
Grant,
that
and he's uh, I would imagine he authors books and on.
authors books and writes articles. I think he's got a weekly article he writes.
Hmm.
I think I think he's a professor at Penn
Hmm.
and out of Wharton, but I've also seen a lot of his work through the Sloan, MIT Sloan. I also read the Harvard Business Review is continues to be a great periodical of current uh, trends and where things are going. Our local newspaper, the Tennessean has stuff on a local basis, although not as much of things that will keep me as informed about the world at large. Um, I think the key for me, Craig, is a diversity of resources, um, to continue to read and consider and to listen to it. You said it earlier, curiosity,
Mm,
and the more curious one can be, looking at and understanding and gaining insight from a diversity of sources, and with the ability to bring those together. What's happening in four different places, and you can bring that together, really does give you insight that you might not have had before.
yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
it can happen pretty quickly because of the internet again,
Oh, yeah.
or even AI. As you said, you can ask for a topic, and within minutes you've got, how many sources were considered for those
Yeah.
topics, where you have a chance to understand what's going on.
Yeah. It is really amazing because, you think back to, we were just talking about the 80s and TQM, and there wasn't much, there might have been an internet, but it was all probably government controlled maybe at that time. I'm
Well,
not
and it
sure.
was so slow and so,
Yeah. Yeah.
just so inadequate at the time. It was really the very, very, very beginning. I
Right.
remember I had a position as a regional vice president for a consulting firm, and I didn't have internet. I
Hmm.
don't even think I had email
Yeah.
then, or maybe I just got email, something like that. I do remember in 1983, go back a while, I purchased what was then known as a bag phone.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Remember
yeah.
the Motorola
Oh, yeah.
had produced something called a bag phone, which was the beginning of the cellular phone. It looked just like the phone that we used to have on our house. Who's got a house phone anymore? We
Nobody.
all gotten rid of those.
Mhm.
It looked like a telephone. You carried it in a bag. You plugged it into your cigarette lighter, and you put a
Mhm.
portable antenna on top of your car, and you could get uh, uh, phone service, car to a car phone. It was called a car phone
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
those days. That was the precursor to. Now I couldn't do anything but make a phone call.
Yeah.
There's nothing else on there. Just make a phone call.
Right.
And and now look at today.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
It is.
It's
Yes.
unbelievable. I mean, and that's where I was going with this. And I forgot about bag phones. My wife had a bag phone,
Yeah.
back in the day. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, you got a bag phone? You must be, she was in sales.
Yeah.
And another guy I knew who was, kind of like on the leading edge of stuff, he got himself a bag phone. And I was like, and they weren't freaking cheap. They were pretty darn expensive to get one of them.
$1,000. I paid twelve
Yeah.
hundred dollars.
And the batteries that, they'd probably last for what, 30 minutes maybe? I don't
That's
know.
about it. That's why you had to plug it into your cigarette lighter to
Into your
work it
cigarette
in your
lighter,
car.
exactly.
That's right.
And,
And
and
and now today, this morning, um, I also spend a fair amount of my time with high school youth
oh
today.
wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So one of the things I do is I go into high schools, and I help the youth today understand what it means to be a person of high character, and what it means to develop the skills that'll help you be a thriving citizen of the world. So so those kids don't have any clue what we're talking about as a bag phone. They
Mhm.
do not know life without the internet. They don't know life without that device, without computers. What do you mean you didn't have email? What do you mean you didn't have text messaging? What do you mean, Mr. Lowenthal, you didn't have this? Well, that's the speed with which our world has really changed.
It is amazing, and the funny thing about it is, what our parents lived from, mine were born in the 30s, and they recently passed here in the last couple of years. They've
Yeah,
seen a lot of change in their time. Both my
yeah,
my dad grew up on a farm. My mother was, of meager means, and technology evolved. People landed on the moon.
right.
That was pretty big. But
Yeah,
here we are, and you just talked about from the 80s until now, and we're right at the beginning of AI. What's it going to look like 40 years from now?
yeah.
What's life
But
going to look?
what's interesting, you asked about how things change. So all these things have changed, but what stayed the same is that people still want to belong.
Yeah.
People still want to be included. People still want recognition for good work.
Mm-hmm.
They still want friendship. They still want community.
Yeah.
They still want to be seen as unique individuals that can make a contribution. That hasn't changed
Yeah. Yeah.
over the millennia of time that's
Yeah.
been out there. So, as leaders and coaches, we have to recognize that,
Yeah.
which is
Exactly.
why I say leadership hasn't changed in terms of what it is. It's changed in terms of what it's directed toward and
Right.
what it's intended to help people achieve.
Yeah. Right. Right. And yeah, and to your point, human behavior hasn't changed. Well, I take that back. Human needs haven't changed, right? Technology's changed, and enabled us to get away from those things that at one time, everybody did naturally, right? Like, I don't know, spend time together in a community rather than being on an electronic community on a small little phone. And if technology had and those things were designed to get you hooked and connected right into their
Right.
application to
That's
get
right.
you uh, addicted to it. I mean, that's kind of a bold statement, but I'm not
Yeah.
too sure that too many people would argue with me. A lot of people are
Yeah.
addicted to it. You walk around and you see people sitting at cafes and they're out on dates, and both of them are looking at their stupid phone. I'm like, well,
Well,
you got
families. You go to a
families
family
even,
restaurant, and
right?
what do you go? Mom and dad are on their phones, the kids are on their phones, and there's
Yeah.
absolutely no interaction going on.
Which is crazy. And I would like to see technology evolve with the human in mind, if that makes
Exactly.
sense. For
Yep.
for the benefit of humanity, not for the benefit of I can't, I'm not a corporate basher, but there has to be some responsibility here, right? And there's got to be some intelligent thinking going forward.
Right.
But where I was starting, what the thought I had back when we first started this conversation was, man, I remember doing research in the mid 80s for a topic that where I was working, and I had to go dig physically, like at libraries, multiple, because there was minimal information, and then reach out, and now all of that is available to me on my phone, at the beach with me clicking a few, keys on my phone. It's just fascinating to see the
Instantaneously,
evolution.
almost instantaneously.
Instantaneously, right.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, man, it has been so much fun having a chat with you, learning about leadership, learning about your journey, and learning about what your passions are.
Thank
I
you.
really do appreciate you taking the time to engage and teach us.
My pleasure. It's been great. Great seeing you and talking to you again, Craig.
Yeah, we'll get together here soon, huh?
Let's play some golf.
That sounds good. It's about that time
Oh,
of year.
I'm with you.
All right,
All
take
right.
care. Bye.
Thanks.